Okay, so let's talk about Uganda's 2026 election. This was so much more than just a choice between politicians. It was really a battle for the soul of the nation, pitting a leader who's been in power for nearly 4 decades against a generation that's never known anything else. Let's break down what happened.
So on one side, you have Yoweri Museveni, one of Africa's longest-serving presidents. And on the other, you've got Bobi Wine, a pop star who became a politician and the voice for a whole new generation. This wasn't just a contest between two candidates. It was a genuine clash of eras.
To really get what was going on here, you have to understand Uganda's demographics. It has the second youngest population in the entire world. We're talking over 70% of its people are under 30. And with youth unemployment just soaring, their frustration really became the engine of this entire election.
So you can imagine, right? This demographic powder keg set the stage for an unbelievably tense and, well, often violent campaign period. Let's take a look at how the government responded to this youth-led challenge.
Things got intense. International observers, we're talking everyone from Amnesty International to the UN, they all reported a brutal campaign of repression. Hundreds of opposition members were arrested, rallies were broken up with beatings and tear gas. The situation got so militarized that the main challenger, Bobi Wine, literally had to campaign wearing body armor. Just think about that. And the government's official stance on these tactics? Well, it was completely unapologetic. In a New Year's Eve address, President Museveni himself actually defended using tear gas.
All that tension from the campaign, it didn't just disappear on Election Day. Nope, it spilled right over into a highly controversial vote and its aftermath.
So on the day of the vote, the government imposes a nationwide internet blackout, just shuts it all down. Then polling was delayed for hours in a lot of places because of technical glitches with the voter kits. The opposition, of course, immediately alleged that the whole blackout was just cover for widespread ballot stuffing.
So when the Electoral Commission finally announced the official results, it wasn't even close. They declared a massive landslide victory for the incumbent, President Museveni, with what looks like a staggering 72% of the vote. But, and this is a huge but, that landslide came with the lowest voter turnout since 2006. Nearly half of all registered voters, almost 11 million people, just stayed away from the polls entirely.
The opposition's response was swift and it was absolute. Bobi Wine immediately came out and rejected the outcome, calling it a complete fabrication and telling his supporters to peacefully protest. What came next was a really volatile escalation. The whole post-election period was defined by protests, a swift and heavy-handed security crackdown, and mounting pressure from the international community. In just the first few days after the vote, protests erupted and were met with deadly force. Bobi Wine was put under house arrest, and after his home was raided by the military, he was actually forced into hiding. Then, the military issued a 48-hour ultimatum for his surrender. It was just one thing after another. And the state's response was lethal. The president's own son, a top military commander, took to social media to actually boast that the military had killed 22 opposition members, who he called terrorists. So, as you can imagine, international pressure started to build. In a letter expressing profound concern, members of the European Parliament said that reports from observers showed the election failed to meet even the most fundamental democratic standards. So, why does all of this matter? Well, because according to analysts, this election was never really about who was going to win on January 15th. For many, that outcome was seen as pretty much a foregone conclusion.
No, it was really about something called succession politics. It was an intense power struggle, not for the present, but for what comes after Museveni's nearly 40-year rule. The election was just the public stage where different factions within the regime could signal their loyalty and kind of jockey for future position.
And the clearest signs of this struggle were actually visible inside Museveni's own ruling party, the NRM. Its internal primaries were marked by unprecedented violence and allegations of fraud. The fallout was huge, with over 200 members who lost primaries just deciding to run as independents anyway, which really shows you the deep fractures in the party.
And that brings us right back to that low voter turnout. Think about this. Over 10.9 million registered voters didn't cast a ballot for either of the main candidates. That speaks volumes about a profound lack of faith, not just in the process, but in the choices themselves.
So all of this leaves Uganda at this really critical crossroads. You have an entrenched leadership that's secured another term, but at the same time, a massive youth movement has been galvanized and feels completely shut out of the system. The election didn't resolve Uganda's tensions, it just exposed them, leaving this huge unresolved question of who and what comes next.